The morning sun barely peeked through the thin curtains, soft and golden, like it was trying not to intrude. I sat up slowly, brushing my hands down my lap, the fabric of my nightgown worn but clean. There was no sound from the hallway, no footsteps, no giggles, no "Happy birthday, Mama," like there used to be. Still, I got up. Habit is a hard thing to kill. I folded my blanket, fluffed the two small pillows on the twin bed, and made my way to the kitchen. I moved like I had purpose, because I did. I'd cook breakfast, like always. Maybe today someone would remember. Maybe. I made eggs, 2 slices of toast, and that old-school bacon, the kind that pops grease all over the stove. LaShondra didn't like the smell, but I didn't care today. I poured myself a cup of coffee, extra strong, and pulled out the small chocolate cake I'd baked 2 days ago. Just in case. I didn't put candles on it yet. That felt desperate. But I did hum a tune my husband used to sing to me on my birthday, soft and deep, "Ain't No Sunshine." He'd sing that, slow and sweet, while cooking me shrimp and grits in that same kitchen. It felt like a lifetime ago. The hallway creaked. My son Darnell shuffled past with his Bluetooth in one ear and eyes on a text. "Morning," he mumbled without even looking at me. LaShondra followed, hips swaying, dressed sharp like she was headed to brunch. "You making all that noise this early?" she snapped, not bothering to say good morning. She sniffed the air. "Lord, I swear that grease smell gonna kill us all one day." I said nothing, just stirred my coffee and sat down at the table with my plate. The twins were already in the living room, glued to their tablets, volume all the way up. One of them sneezed. No one said bless you. I sat there, listening to forks clink and screens beep. My heart didn't hurt. It ached, slow and dull, like an old bruise. Nobody said a word about the date. I took my tea to the porch. It was quieter out there, more honest. The wind at least touched me like it knew I was here. Birds made their noise, the trees rustled. Life went on, even if no one in that house saw me. LaShondra had the nerve to say to someone on the phone, "Girl, these old folks just be clock watching, waiting to die. They ain't got nothing better to do." She said it loud, like she wanted me to hear. I didn't flinch. I kept sipping. But inside, something shifted. Not rage, not tears, just a slow click, like a door creaking open in my mind. I used to matter. At church, I ran the choir. In the neighborhood, folks came to me for advice, prayers, recipes. At home, I was Mama, the center, the glue. Now, I felt like a piece of furniture. There, but never seen. I looked at my phone. No missed calls. I checked again. Still none. Maybe one of the kids from down south would call. Cheryl? Maurice? Nothing. Just a robocall offering me a new Medicare plan. Silence came back, loud as ever. I almost called one of them. Almost. But I didn't. If they wanted to call, they would have. Miss Lula, my neighbor across the street, waved from her porch. I waved back. She didn't know it, but that wave saved me. Just a little. I went back inside, put the cake on the table, still untouched. I ran a finger around the rim of the frosting. Just one finger, just to taste something sweet. Later, while folding laundry, I heard LaShondra again. This time, she was laughing with someone over speakerphone. "She's still waiting on somebody to say happy birthday? Chile, please. What's she gonna do? Sue us for forgetting?" I held the towel tighter, pressed it against my chest. That was the moment. Not when they forgot, but when they mocked. Something inside me, my pride, my peace, it didn't break. It rose, slow and tall. They don't see me? Fine. But I see them. I hear everything. And silence. Silence ain't weakness. It's a wall, a shield, a mirror. That night, when the house was quiet, I sat at the table, turned off all the lights except the little lamp in the corner, lit one candle. Just one. "Happy birthday to me," I sang, low and shaky. My voice cracked halfway through. I stared into that flame, saw the reflection of a woman still standing, still breathing, not broken. "You still here, Amber? That means something," I whispered. Then I made a wish. Let the truth come out one day. And right before I blew the candle, I said one more thing, soft, like a promise. "They gon' learn." The sun had barely set when Jalen poked his head into my room and said, "Ma, we're doing a little dinner tonight. Just something small. Be ready by 6. No explanation, no smile. Just a, "Be ready." I knew it wasn't about me. It was never really about family anymore. At least, not the kind we used to be. This was Lashandra's idea. Probably trying to show off for her book club girlfriends again. I'd seen her straightening throw pillows and fussing over wine glasses all afternoon. They never needed me to help, just expected me to appear dressed appropriate. I pulled out the same shawl I wore yesterday, the one she once rolled her eyes at like it smelled of dust and memories. But that shawl? That belonged to me and everything I'd endured. I wrapped it around my shoulders like armor. As I walked down the hallway, Malia, my granddaughter, looked up from her phone just long enough to say, "You look pretty, Grandma." My heart jumped a little. Not because it was grand, but because it was real. For a moment, I remembered when this house used to pulse with life. Holidays used to mean pot roast in the oven, sweet potato pies on the counter, and my husband's voice booming with laughter. Now it felt like I was walking into a theater where I wasn't cast but expected to perform. The dining room sparkled under that new chandelier Lashandra insisted they needed, said it made the space feel more elevated, but all it did was cast harsh light on fake smiles. Her friends started arriving one by one, heels clicking, wine bottles clinking, perfume trailing behind them like a flag. None of them looked my way long enough to register that I was a person. Just a fixture in the room. An old chair. One woman, tall and loud, laughed and said, "Y'all lucky to have built-in babysitting." She pointed at me like I wasn't standing right there. Jalen chuckled. "We do what we can," he said, lifting his glass. Didn't even glance my way. I sat at the far end of the table, not at the head, where I used to carve turkey, pass the prayer, tell stories. No. That spot now belonged to a centerpiece of silk flowers and Lashandra's carefully staged hospitality. She stood and raised her glass. "To strong women, the ones who hold it all down." Her friends clapped, and she smiled. To herself. I didn't raise my glass. Through fork scrapes and empty flattery, Lashandra slid in her jabs like they were part of the menu. "Some people need to remember they guests in this house, not matriarchs." She said it sweet, like syrup, but her eyes were sharp. The room giggled like children at recess, pretending they didn't understand what was happening. I opened my mouth to speak, but Jalen jumped in with a joke about football, loud and off-topic. Conversation shifted. On purpose, I didn't push. I just gripped my fork. Not out of anger, but restraint. My husband used to catch that kind of disrespect with a stare, shut it down cold. But he was gone, and without him, this house had become open season. I looked at Jalen. I raised that boy to be a man, I thought. But a man who won't protect his mama, that ain't manhood, that's height. Later, someone passed Lashandra the aux cord. She pulled up a video on her phone, holding it high for all to see. It was one of those internet pranks, someone stumbling down a staircase, arms flailing, set to music. But she'd added a voiceover, an old, creaky one saying, "Help! I done fell!" Everyone laughed. "That's what y'all get for letting Grandma near the stairs," she said, grinning like she told the funniest joke this side of town. "Better watch out, Mama," she added, fake winking. "Don't want no accidents." I didn't blink, didn't flinch. I just looked at her, slow and long. The table went quiet. One of her friends coughed. Another asked about the wine. I didn't leave. I didn't cry. I just ate, one slow, deliberate bite after another. Fork to plate, chew. A swallow. Repeat. Dinner ended. Plates clinked. Laughter died down. Nobody asked if I wanted dessert. I stood, picked up my own plate, took it to the sink. They acted like I was invisible again. Fine. As I walked toward the hallway, Lashandra called out in a sing-song voice, "Good night, Your Majesty." I stopped, turned halfway. Not for drama, just enough to make sure they heard. "Y'all gonna miss me one day," I said. "And it won't be for what I gave. It'll be for what you lost." Nobody said a word. I went to my room, closed the door, sat down slow, like the day was still pressing on my shoulders. "Time to change the script," I whispered. I couldn't sleep. I laid there in the dark, stiff as the wooden headboard behind me. My hands folded on my chest like I was preparing for something final. The echoes of the dinner clung to me like smoke, thick, sour, and slow to clear. From downstairs, muffled laughter drifted up. Lashandra and her friends still drinking, still playing perfect hosts in a house I once helped make possible. I used to wipe Jalen's tears in that same living room when his daddy whipped him too hard. Now I was just tolerated, like a guest overstaying her welcome. I got up and cracked the door. That's when I heard him. "Jalen." "She's a burden," he said, just like that. No weight in his voice, no hesitation. I can't expect Lashandra to keep putting up with it. And Lashandra, like she'd been waiting on cue, chimed in, "You gotta put your wife first, baby. Your mama already lived her life." I didn't flinch, didn't cry, just backed into the room, shut the door, and sat at the dresser. The mirror didn't lie. It showed a face I barely recognized. Not broken, just done. "Sometimes," I muttered, "the loudest disrespect comes wrapped in soft tones and shared DNA." I reached for the bottom drawer of my suitcase. The journal was still there, tucked under my clothes like a secret too tired to hide. Old leather, soft with years of handling. I ran my fingers across the cover before flipping it open. Inside, my own handwriting danced in shaky ink, half prayers, half confessions. Elijah's voice came back to me through those pages. I remembered the day he warned me. Not loud, not harsh, just a quiet truth. "That girl wants power, Amber. She don't want family, not really." Back then, I defended Lashandra, told him he was being unfair, but deep down I saw it. The little ways she twisted things, making me seem forgetful, leaving out parts of conversation so I'd question myself, and always, in front of Jalen. One entry stopped me cold. Written the week Elijah died. "She's pushing for the will to be updated. Says Elijah already told the lawyer? I can't think. I don't want to sign anything, but she says it's what he wanted." I could still hear her voice, so sweet it made my teeth ache. "Mama Amber, you don't need to worry about the paperwork. Let me handle it." That's what she said while I was still folding the man's socks, crying over the scent he left behind. I kept reading, each line dragging something buried back to the surface. Regret, shame, anger. But not just at them, at me, for letting it slide, for staying quiet, for mistaking endurance for grace. I remembered the day Jalen accused me of losing the bank documents, said I never gave them to him. But I had. I remembered the envelope, the color of his jacket, even the cologne he was wearing. Still, I apologized. Still, I doubted myself. I flipped to a clean page, wrote slowly. "Tonight, I watched my own son laugh while they erased me. and I clapped along to keep from being pushed out completely. The words bled onto the paper like a wound finally breaking open. Then something caught my eye. A folded slip in the back pocket of the journal. I pulled it out. It was a receipt. Law Offices of James T. Monroe. Client, LaShondra Hall. Date, 1 week before Elijah's funeral. Payment confirmed. My chest tightened. It had been here the whole time. If I'd opened this back then, I whispered, maybe things would be different now. I closed the journal, held it in my lap. No tears came, just a heavy knowing. I walked over to my suitcase, unlocked the box inside, and placed the journal gently in it, like it was something sacred, something final. This wasn't about revenge. Not yet. It was about remembering. All of it. Malia's face flashed in my mind, her smile, her questions. What kind of example was I setting? Teaching her to smile through being erased. I looked around the room. The curtains, the rug, even the lamp. None of it was mine. I was just a placeholder in a home I used to dream of owning. I may not have bricks and walls, I whispered, but I still got roots, and they run deep. I sat down again and started listing names in my mind, people I could trust, people who still owed me truths. The quiet wheels began to turn. I took the journal back out, slid it under my pillow, my shield, my weapon. You ain't useless, Amber, I whispered to myself. They just scared of the woman who remembers. Then I opened the journal to the last page and wrote one word, underlined 3 times. War. I sat at the breakfast table before anyone else, hands folded, heart already tight. The silence was deep. I could taste it. When LaShondra swept in with her bright voice and forced laughter, it landed heavy, too loud, too centered on her. She greeted me like she'd practiced. The kids glanced over. Jalen looked up, and then looked away. I tried to join the small talk. The weather, the morning news. LaShondra cut me off mid-sentence, asking about Mama Amber's plans today. She flitted a heavy look my way. You should relax more, Mama Amber. You've been forgetful lately. Might want to get that checked. That hit like sludge in my throat. I said nothing. Malia's eyes flicked between us. She saw. I excused myself before coffee got cold, telling them I had errands to run. My steps felt heavy, like I was leading myself out of a trap. I drove myself to the credit union where Elijah and I had held our accounts. Mrs. Benita greeted me by name, then froze. Didn't y'all switch this over last year? She asked, voice tight. I checked my statements. Elijah's name had been removed. My access was marked conditional, flagged for cognitive concerns. Ms. Benita leaned in. Someone submitted a document saying you showed early signs of decline. It's from a clinic I've never heard of. My pulse thudded. The signature on the document, a doctor I never met. The witness, LaShondra's cousin. My hands trembled, not with age, but with rage. They weren't just trying to ignore me. They were trying to declare me unfit. I left there without a word, parked by a small clinic listed on that form. Inside, dust, silence. The doctor had left. The receptionist had no records of me. Everything erased. On the way home, I stopped at a park bench. I closed my eyes. The weight of it all pressed down. They didn't just try to erase me. They tried to declare me unfit to fight back. I remembered Elijah's voice, calm but firm. Don't let them write you off while you're still breathing. Walking back to the car, I held myself steady. I had to. Back home, I lay in the suitcase drawer, reached for an envelope marked Elijah's safe keys. My hands didn't shake this time. I dialed Ms. Thelma's number. She used to work for the firm downtown. New wills, new loopholes. I told her I needed help. I told her I couldn't wait. Jalen met me in the hallway. I glanced at him. Soft smile. I got a few things cleared up at the bank, I said, voice calm. No accusation, no drama. He nodded, unsure. In my head, I whispered, "You don't shout when someone's trying to paint you crazy. You whisper the truth and let it thunder later." Later, I pulled out the journal. I slowly wrote what I'd uncovered. Then I added a new section. People who knew, people who lied, people who might help. I jotted names. I held myself to clarity, not rush. I ended the page with one word: focus. I tucked the journal under my pillow. Then, sliding the house key inside my bra, I felt a spark, a new sense of safety. I was in the kitchen doing dishes when it happened. Lashandra let one of my old mugs slip from her hand, clattering against the sink. She didn't gasp. She shrugged and said loud enough for all to hear, "Oops, guess that was one of your old things anyway." She smiled like she gave me a gift by letting it break. My grip tightened on the counter, knuckles whitening. That mug, gifted years ago, had more dignity than the way she just discarded it. Later, through a cracked door, I overheard her on the phone. Her voice polite but sharp. She said, "We need to move her out legally, cleanly." Then she added, "Make sure no documents back her. I want no surprises." My heart pounded. That line, legally, cut deeper than a blade. I remembered Elijah's warning. They won't come at you head on, but they'll bleed you with whispers. Today she'd started the bleeding. That night, I slipped a tiny recorder into my sweater pocket, the one Elijah gave me long ago, just in case. At dinner, Lashandra tilted her head, tone soft. "Mama Amber, I've been thinking. Maybe you'd be more comfortable in a quiet facility, less stress. We could find a place where someone will look after you better." I held my eyes steady and asked, "What makes you think I need help, baby?" She smiled. "Oh, I just worry. You've said things lately. Forgot names, missed dates. I thought maybe I could help make things easier." She paused, then added, "You yourself said you forget things all the time. I just helped make it official." The recorder sat in my pocket, capturing every syllable. I felt cold, but I didn't tremble. I sat silent, baited, but calm. The truth was there in her words. She tried to discredit me, disguised as concern. After dinner, I walked to the laundry room, flipped open my old flip phone, and dialed Ms. Ging. Thelma. No one else could hear. I told her what I'd recorded, what I'd found at the bank, the fake medical note. Her voice was sharp. "Girl, they about to try everything. I'll get you connected to a paralegal who handles elder fraud, and you need to get into that safe deposit box fast, before they move or hide something." I promised I would. I hung up and looked at my reflection in the laundry room mirror. I barely recognized the woman staring back, lines on her face, eyes tired but sharp. I opened the journal and wrote about being underestimated, how silence can be sharper than any insult. At the top of a new page, I wrote, "Still, like dust, I'll rise." I didn't shout. I whispered in ink what I couldn't say with loud words. Before I slept, I found Elijah's old jacket in my bag. Inside the pocket was a note in his handwriting. "Never let 'em take what you ain't done giving." It was dated 2 weeks before he died. I held it close, not for comfort, but resolve. I placed it next to the recorder. "You didn't just leave me money, Eli. You left me a map." I arrived at the Legal Aid Center with the recorder in my bag, documents folded carefully, heart steady. Mr. Langston, a soft-spoken paralegal with deep lines in his face, greeted me at the door. He didn't rush me. He let me breathe first. I sat, placed the evidence on the table: audio, forged medical note, bank papers. I told the story plainly, each word measured. I pressed play. Lashandra's voice filled the room. He listened in silence. When it ended, he exhaled. "Ma'am, That's enough to light some real fires. He stood, snapped photos of every piece, then leaned back. We'll run this through a partner law firm that handles elder fraud. But until that's done, we move quietly. He slid a form toward me, asking permission to alert APS. My hand hovered. I signed nothing. Let them report it, I said. Let truth speak first. He nodded. You're smart to hold your line. They'll feel this shift. When I got home, Lashandra was waiting, arms open, cookies in hand. I picked up some of your favorites, she said with that practiced warmth. I studied her face, watched the way her smile trembled. I didn't reach for the cookie. I listened. She asked about my visit, but I nodded quietly, letting my silence weigh. I kept recording. Jalen hovered nearby, eyes down, hands in pockets. I think he could feel someone behind his mask. The more I said less, the more they stumbled. Late afternoon, there's a knock. A social worker from APS is at the door, clipboard in hand. Lashandra tries to block her, voice rising, but the worker doesn't hesitate. I'd like to speak with Amber alone, she says. Lashandra protests, tears forming. The worker ignores her and enters. In her calm voice, the worker outlines concerns, forged medical documents, elder safety issues. She says the case is flagged urgent. I stand in that living room, shoulders squared. I don't want punishment, I tell the worker. I want them seen for what they are. The worker thanks me, collects her papers, walks out. The weight in the room shifts. By evening, Lashandra can't keep pretend calm. She corners me in the kitchen, voice low and dangerous. You think you're smart now? That old black woman with a recorder thinks she can mess with my life? She hisses. I meet her eyes. I'm not trying to be smart. I'm being thorough. She leans in. You push this further, your son will lose everything. Our name will be mud. I didn't shrink. I said, then let the dirt rise. Let it choke out all the lies that tried to bury me. Later, I walked to my room, hand brushing Elijah's jacket folded on the chair. My phone buzzed. They know you're fighting. Now they'll fight dirtier. I locked the door, sat in the dark. Then it's time I fought like somebody who got nothing left to lose. I walked into the living room just as Lashandra was greeting her guests, laughter wafting too loud and polished. Something shifted in the air. Her smile was sharp, forced. A guest raised a glass to family unity, but I caught the eyes flicker, one look of doubt. Jalen stood by the couch, picking at his nails, glancing between his mother and me like he was trying to pick sides without making it obvious. I sat quietly, letting the silence grow thick. I didn't speak. My eyes traveled over Salami's hands, slight tremors, fingers curled too tight. Her laugh cracked mid-pitch, the first cracks I've been waiting on. They thought masks would shield them. Truth sees through every crack. Then Mr. Langston turned the corner into the foyer. Unexpected, dressed serious. With him came the paralegal who'd reviewed my evidence. They didn't announce themselves. But Lashandra noticed. Panic flickered across her features. She gestured toward the dining area, whispered something to a guest, tried to redirect attention, but it was too late. Mr. Langston stepped forward, voice steady. I've seen dozens of wills, he said, quiet but firm. Mrs. Raines is cleaner than any I've worked with. The room went still. Salome's mask slipped, for a fraction of a second, fear in her eyes. A guest murmured, she must be doing something right. I watched Malia's face glow with surprise. Truth had taken the stage. Salome recovered, standing suddenly, demanding the documents. Give me that recorder. Give me your papers, Mama. Her voice was sharp. You just want attention. You're making a spectacle. Drama queen, Mama. That's what you are now. Jalen tried to step in. Mom, he started, but she cut him off. You don't know what's best for us, Mama. You never did. She turned to Mr. Langston. Who are you anyway? Some small-time paralegal with nothing behind you? She spat. He remained calm. He held up a photo, a copy of bank logs, medical files, and the forged document. Silence swallowed her words, her face drained. She turned and strode toward the stairs, knocking over a vase in her exit. Guests froze. Jalen stayed silent, staring at his mother's retreating back. Then the doorbell rang. Marcy Boone, longtime neighbor, stood in the doorway. She held up her hand. I've known Mrs. Rain all my life. She never missed church for money or glory. Her voice echoed in the room. In her presence, something shifted. The whispers started. I knew something was off. That girl's been too quiet. I stood steady, my voice soft. Truth don't need a spotlight. It just needs a stage. Later, Marcy and I sat on the back porch. The lights of the house glowed behind us. She clasped my hand, saying she always saw what others dismissed. I watched Salome's car pull away, disappearing into the dark. I exhaled slow. The weight had shifted. Tonight, the mask fell. They'll never think I was invisible again. I dressed simply but with care. Dark skirt, crisp blouse, that scarf from years ago. I carried the journal, recorder tucked away, and walked into the courthouse calm but alert. As I passed the halls, familiar faces turned to stare. The echoes of whispers followed me in. I remembered how that scarf drew derision once. Now it felt like armor. The courtroom opened into full view, rows of seats filling, glare from windows, the hum of voices fading. Opposing counsel, Sheila DuPont, entered with sharp heels and sharper eyes, glancing my way as if daring me to speak. In my mind, I thought, today they'll learn that time does not erase truth. When the judge entered, the room shifted, murmurs stilled, hearts held. The moment stretched until it snapped into clarity. Sheila stood first, her voice traveled clear. She painted me as fragile, unstable, manipulative. She used words like concerned nephew, mental strain, questionable claims. I listened. Then I rose. I did not plead. I recounted facts. I played the recorder for the judge and gallery. I offered the journal. I called Mr. Langston to the stand. He confirmed authenticity, no edits, no tampering. He spoke quiet, firm truths. The room held its breath. I said, I did not ask for this war, but when family becomes enemy, defense becomes duty. No sound. Silence that tasted heavy, like truth finally landing. Judge Brennan stood, cleared his throat. The air was thick. He asked for order, then spoke. In light of all evidence, I name Ms. Amber Rain the sole heir to Elijah Rain's estate. Gasps erupted. Salome's face went pale. Jalen's eyes widened, hands trembling. The gallery stirred. DuPont leaped to object, but the judge cut her off. Objection overruled. I sank into the chair. No tears, just a slow breath, a victory tempered with weight. The courtroom swirled. Salome demanded recounts, appeals, raised her voice trembling. Jalen remained silent, staring at his mother, then at me. Mr. Langston handed me a sealed envelope from the estate's file, an extra clause from Elijah's original will. Let no one question her right, for what is legally hers is hers alone. Judge read it aloud. The crowd thinned, leaving me standing, charged air around me. I thought, they believed my silence was weakness. Today, silence was my sword. Later, I returned home. The house felt different. LaShondra waited in the driveway, uncertain. She asked softly, "What did the judge say?" I stepped out, holding the document. I looked her in the eye. He called me by name, and your mask just fell. I entered the house with my head high, ready for reckoning, ready for what came next. The house felt hollow when I walked in that night. The silence was deep, almost sacred. Neighbors peered through their curtains, some nodded as if proud, others turned away, pretending not to know. I didn't need their words. The air inside held its own applause. The rooms looked both familiar and foreign, like they'd been waiting for me. The piano, the worn photos, the scarf hanging over the chair. I touched each one, claiming it again. My footsteps echoed soft against the wood floors. I didn't call out for anyone, didn't need to. I was ruler and guest in my own home. I whispered to myself. I didn't have to shout. They heard anyway. Down the hall, Lashandra avoided my eyes, retreating into her phone like a shield. Jalen stood near the kitchen doorway, hands shoved in pockets, face full of guilt he didn't know how to name. Salome gathered her purse and slipped out the front door without a word. The quiet that followed wasn't peace, it was surrender. I walked past them without looking back. In the kitchen, I poured a glass of water. The sound of the glass against the counter was louder than their silence. Every insult, every whisper I'd endured came back, not to hurt, but to remind me what endurance costs. I looked out the window and thought, they tried to write me off, but I was always my own story. Later that evening, a soft knock came at my door. Ayana stood there, holding her small hands together, eyes bright. "Grandma," she said shyly, "can I hold the scarf?" I smiled, lifted it from my dresser, and wrapped it gently around her shoulders. "You wear it right," I told her. "This isn't just cloth. It's history, armor, and truth." She ran her fingers along its edge. "Will you teach me how to hold on to truth?" she whispered. I nodded. "Yes, baby. But first you gotta learn what's real." I reached into my drawer and handed her the CD. "This holds what they tried to bury. Keep it safe." She cradled it like it was made of light. The scarf and the CD, two small things, but the weight of generations rested inside them. When she left, I opened my journal one last time. The pages were heavy with ink, tears, and proof. I wrote slowly, "I do not lean on bitterness. I stand on truth." My mind drifted to the scarf from the first day, the fights, the lies, the courtroom, the way silence turned into power. I added one last quote from Toni Morrison. "If you surrendered to the air, you could ride it." I closed the journal gently, resting my hand on its cover. The story was whole, even if the wounds still hummed beneath the surface. I stepped outside onto the back porch. The Chicago night stretched wide, lights flickering in the distance like promises. The wind brushed my face, carrying the scent of rain and iron. I held the scarf in one hand, the journal and CD in the other. The porch light glowed behind me, soft and steady. I whispered, "I'm not done. But I'm home." Then I turned off the light. The faint glow from inside the house lingered, a quiet witness that I had been here, and that my story would outlive the silence.